to the questions on the border visit and the press being blocked out.
There was that group of Republicans in the House that introduced a measure that would add some measures for border security that would also create a path to citizenship for people who were in this country illegally. Is that something that any of you would support?
Now, look, I'm sure that there will be ongoing debates about what to do concerning immigration. What we know for sure what not to do is what the Biden administration is doing now. It is an absolute crisis and disaster. No state is impacted more than my own state. The Biden administration is releasing illegal immigrants into Texas, is setting up detention facilities in Dallas, the convention center in downtown Dallas, is setting up detention facilities in Midland, Texas, against the wishes of the community. And they're releasing people who are criminal threats, who have criminal histories. They're releasing people who are testing positive for COVID, and they're not testing all the people they're releasing. And it is a public health threat, and the Biden administration refuses to acknowledge it and is trying to cover it up. There is a reason they don't want the press there. And I ask all of you to think for a moment how you would react, how your network would react, how MSNBC would react if the Trump administration said, no press at the border. You would have lost your mind. You would have lit your hair on fire and been screaming on air all day long. That's what Joe Biden is doing to you right now. And he's doing it because he's terrified of people seeing the inhumane conditions, seeing the human tragedies. And I've been down to the border many times, seeing the little boys and little girls that are being physically assaulted, that are being sexually assaulted, that the reports are packed so closely that the kids are having to sleep on their sides in the midst of a pandemic. Joe Biden doesn't want the American people to see that. The purpose of this trip is to help the American people understand the tragedy that's unfolding. Yeah.
On the asylum component, do you think that there should still be an option for people to apply for asylum at the border?
So there is, and we had actually one of the biggest victories, a foreign policy victory and an immigration victory under the Trump administration, what was called the Remain in Mexico policy, which is an agreement that was negotiated with Mexico. The vast majority of illegal immigrants coming to this country right now are not from Mexico. They're not Mexicans. A great many of them are Central Americans who are crossing illegally into Mexico, traveling through Mexico, and then trying to cross illegally into the United States. And what the Trump administration negotiated with the Mexican government is that if you had an illegal immigrant who was applying for asylum, that asylum claim could proceed, but that they would remain in Mexico while the claim was proceeding. And that resulted in a precipitous decline in illegal immigration. When Joe Biden got elected president, one of the very first things he did was rip up that international agreement, just effectively threw it in the trash. And as a result, we're bringing all those folks here, even though they're testing positive for COVID, at a much, much higher rate than the U.S. population, and it is irresponsible. It doesn't make sense. The Remain in Mexico policy was a sound and reasonable policy that allowed the asylum process to move forward without encouraging illegal immigration. Anyone else?
Real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact figure today, but a very high percentage of asylum claims are denied. And the reason we had this flood is because we had set such a low bar on an asylum claim based on credible fear that people coming would just be let in the country and their claim would never really be adjudicated. It'd go on for years. So that's a huge incentive for people to come. What's so sad about the current situation is President Trump, with those agreements in Central America with the MPP program, have pretty well solved the problem, stopped the flow of family units and unaccompanied children that were exploiting that asylum law. And then President Biden just blew that all up. We're also well on our way to fixing this issue of single adults as well by completing the fence, the wall. We have 250 miles yet to go, and it's basically paid for. We're going to be paying the money whether we build it or not, and he stopped building that wall as well. So again, we were so close, and this kind of gets to the other gentleman's question. We want to solve the problem, but you have to start with securing the border, and under the Trump administration, we were so close to accomplishing that, and that's all been blown up right now, and we are back to not only square one, we are so far behind where we were even under the Obama administration. It's just a tragedy. Just a tragedy.
The Biden administration says that the asylum process was completely dismantled under the Trump administration. So, with that said, how should this asylum process be rebuilt other than Remain in Mexico? Should there be any sort of asylum, how many asylum seekers should be let?
So under Obama, they develop a process, and this is what they're talking about, of apprehending. They don't even have to try and catch because people turn themselves in. They apprehend, they process, and they disperse, which is a huge incentive for more people to come in, get apprehended, processed, and dispersed. That's what President Trump stopped in order to solve the problem of people exploiting our laws. That is exactly what they're complaining about was dismantled. That's what we had to dismantle to solve the problem.
Can I follow up on that? To the idea of, Democrats, I think, would argue that President Trump didn't solve the problem, he just moved it to the other side of the border, right? I mean, you've got people remaining in Mexico. I don't have to tell you, I mean, Ciudad Juarez is one of the most dangerous cities on the planet. So are you comfortable with the humanitarian implications of saying, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here?
So one of the things Democrats don't seem to understand is the concept of incentives. In 2011, there were roughly 6,000 unaccompanied children who crossed illegally into this country. Then President Obama signed DACA, signed executive amnesty directed at kids. The predictable effect, if you tell people you get amnesty if you come to this country illegally as a kid, is that a lot more kids will come to this country illegally. And as a result of that illegal and unconstitutional executive amnesty, that number 6,000 skyrocketed the next year to 93,000. In 2014, I visited the cages that were holding kids that were built by Barack Obama. It was Barack Obama who built the cages. And I remember visiting with HHS officials in the Obama administration who described children that were coming over and the cartels that were bringing them in. The cartel members were putting guns to the heads of kids and forcing kids to cut off the fingers or ears of other children. And what the cartels would do then is send those fingers and ears to the parents and extract a few thousand more dollars for their child that they had handed over to the human smuggler to take to America. And the Obama HHS described to me how they were facing, number one, kids that were horribly mutilated, missing